Hey, I felt like doing something a little more relaxing for a bit, so let's talk. Okay, so maybe a bit negative of a topic, but every time Genshin goes through like a lull period, where there's no content really to play, I start thinking a lot about what I wish the game could be. And so, for today, I have a list of, sort of wish list even, of features I wish the game would implement eventually. Not next update, not the one after that probably, but maybe in year 3 or something we'll get some of these. So, for sure, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of ways the game could be better is just really simple. It says story quests right here. They should just let all the story quests be replayable. I don't understand why they aren't. So like most of the time when I've heard people talk about features they wish were implemented in the game, or like people wishing events would stay around forever, or like the Golden Apple Archipelago wouldn't go away or something like that. The excuse that people usually give for MiHoYo not keeping those things in the game is that this is a mobile game and it's already huge and it just can't take up that much space. You can't leave all that content in at the same time. But I'd assume that the story quests that are already in the game, they have to be in the game before you play them, because you are going to play them at some point. Therefore, I'd assume it doesn't delete them from the game files after you play them, and I don't understand why we can't replay them. The only reasonable explanation I could think of for them not letting story quests be replayable is that they don't want to give you that much access to the trial 5-star characters, because then you might not want to wish for them as much? I don't know. But even that seems like a dumb excuse and, really just lame. So I hope eventually they implement a replayable quest menu, because there's definitely been quests that I wished I could play over again, whether it be like immediately after or much later. The most recent example was one of the Inazuma story quests, whatever the one where we fought Raiden was, because that was a whole boss fight that was unique to that story quest that just was, I'm assuming it was still in the game, you just couldn't play it over again. And so I wished I could have replayed that quest. So hopefully eventually that'll be a feature. Another thing that I would love to have, I was gonna say fixed, but I guess overhauled in the game maybe, is the Adventurer's Handbook. Now that I think about it, it would be nice to get more of these to do, but I don't really see that happening at this point. I think that's extremely unlikely. But the main thing I wanted to talk about with this is probably even less likely to get fixed. And I have a crazy conspiracy theory about that, but it's the enemies tab. From the very first day of Genshin, this has not worked the way you would assume it should work. Because say for example there's like 50 Whopper flowers across all of Liyue, it'll only show you like a dozen, maybe a dozen and a half. I swear to God, there are so many unmarked enemies that it just doesn't show you, when I believe we deserve to have it show us all of them. And I've thought about this so much that my crazy conspiracy theory is that they don't show you every living copy of these enemies purely because they want you to play the game less. There's just so many things about Genshin that scream, stop playing the game, please. And I know I'm not the only person who feels that way, So I don't think it's ever gonna happen, especially as they add more regions and they have more copies of every enemy alive at once. I don't think this is ever gonna show you every enemy, and that's really lame, because some days I just want to relax and go around and kill every single enemy in Teyvat, and the game won't let me do that without fumbling around blindly searching for hidden enemies. So I don't think it'll ever get fixed, but I really wish it would. I know people have talked about this. It's not a difficult thought to have, to wish for more weapon types available to characters, especially with the Fatui, who use an entirely different arsenal of weapons from any of the characters we control. I would just love for them to add like a fighter class. That would be so cool. I know they have that in Honkai. That's what Fu Hua does. She punches and kicks, and I think honestly we'll probably get that at some point in Genshin. But you know, I went and thought about what other weapons would I like to use in Genshin. You know, the Fatui have gunners, the guys with the big hammers. I think the Animo guys just punch. But Honkai has many different weapon types, some of which are scythes, which I think would be really cool in Genshin, if a little unsatisfying. Just because the combat in Honkai is way faster paced than Genshin, you probably couldn't do as cool of scythe maneuvering in Genshin. I believe that some of the Teresa battlesuits have daggers, right? And Child already has a dagger stance. So I think it would be really cool to have just a whole class of character that used 2 daggers, you know? And spin around with them and stuff, I don't know. It would be cool. It's probably one of the less cool options though. And then I was thinking about if Signora would ever be playable. I mean, realistically, if we ever got Signora, she would probably be a catalyst wielder, but in her boss fight, she uses a whip, and that's pretty cool. It would be really cool to have a whip character in Genshin, but I don't know how that would work. That seems kind of weird, and I don't think it would be worth it for them. Like, it just seems like a difficult thing to program or whatever. Another fun character class type to think about is delusion characters, because Child uses a delusion in front of us, and Diluc uses one in the manga. So, you know, maybe eventually we'll get some sort of Honkai-esque multiple copies of one character type system where we could have like regular Diluc and then delusion Diluc. I don't know how delusion Diluc would be different because I think he uses a pyro delusion in the manga, but whatever, you know, it would still be really cool. The next couple are just Honkai features that I wish would be in Genshin. Like, it's already in Honkai, why don't they just do it in Genshin too, you know? First of which is super obvious. I've heard people say this before, but I totally agree. Why can't we just have an in-game monthly login bonus chart thing? You know, the daily bonus that you have to do on your phone or on the website or whatever? Why can't that just be in the game? It seems so simple, right? But they haven't done anything about it. Not that the rewards are very worth doing it in the first place. Second Honkai thing that I want in Genshin is co-op raids. I know people have talked about this one before too, but you know, it works in Honkai. It's really simple, but I'm sure there's a way you could do it in Genshin that could be amazing. Much better than Honkai's raids. Because Honkai's raids are kinda really boring. But you know, like an actual raid with puzzles and mechanics mid-boss fight and stuff, that would be so cool. And another thing that could make the raids extra exciting is raid-specific weapon pools. Honkai has raid-specific weapons where you complete a raid and you get that weapon, but I think it would be so much cooler if Genshin had more of a like Destiny approach to it, where you could get not just like the 4-star raid specific weapon, but also like a couple of new 3-star weapons that are super niche but perform pretty well on some characters, you know? Like a Harbinger of Dawn or something like that. The next thing from Honkai is, I don't know if it would be the best idea. I've heard people say that PvP would be really bad for Genshin, and you know, I don't like PvP, you know? I don't want to fight another person using their characters or something like that, but I think it would be really cool to just have like a weekly boss leaderboard type thing. It could even be like you could accumulate a score. Oh, they already have a boss fighting event where you add more score multipliers that make it more difficult, but they've never done one of those for weekly bosses. In Honkai, there's a thing called the Memorial Arena, and it's basically a weekly leaderboard where everyone fights the same 2 random bosses, and your score competes with a pool of other people for the best rewards. And you also get guaranteed rewards for it. I don't think it's necessary to have rewards for the top performing players even. I just think it would be cool to be able to compare scores to the average, you know? Just show like your surrounding scores and give you a total number out of the people who play, you know? Or like a percentage like Honkai does. While we're on the topic of boss fights, there's so many boss fights. In fact, I think there's a portion in just about every boss fight in the game where the enemy either maneuvers in a way that you can no longer attack them, or just straight up becomes invincible for a period of time. And there's a term for that, it's called time gating. And this is, you know, almost universally recognized, I believe, as bad game design. And you know, it just like feels really disrespectful almost to have me coming in every day, spending my resin on artifacts so I can get the best min-maxed builds, to just have to wait 5 seconds for the boss to be attackable again, to be able to take damage. It's really annoying. Of course, I don't expect them to go back and change boss fights to not have time gating, but I wish they would do it a little bit less, especially when the Abyss has started to include more and more of these bosses that time gate or just fly in a way where only certain characters can even hit them. And the Spiral Abyss isn't calculated by like how much damage you take or how much damage you deal. It's purely time-based. You just have to complete it within a certain time window to get a certain amount of rewards. And having bosses that go invincible, or like the Primo Geovishap, who has insane defense and elemental resistance or whatever until like 5 seconds into the boss fight, that's so frustrating to have to deal with in the Abyss. And I wish they would stop doing it so much. The second thing I want to, you know, be a sort of direction they think about with boss fights is the mechanics we see in boss fights. All of the cubes have... I was really looking at it and I didn't even say the name, I said cube. The hypostases, all of them, they have really interesting mechanics that are different from other bosses, like the Magukenki or this guy. You can just kill them until they are dead, pretty much. But with these things, there's always something special about them. You gotta break the pillars down for this guy. Other ones just require you to hit the little things and do enough damage with an element that can actually damage it. But I think it would be really cool to have more mechanic-y boss fights. Almost like puzzles you have to fight while you're under the pressure of the boss possibly killing you. I think that would be so cool. And you know, that would probably even tie into raids. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, those are actually really similar. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is totally copium, but Genshin is a mobile game, you know? It can run on most phones. Why can't I play it on my Switch? I just want a Switch version. I'd be happy if that's all we got in the future out of this entire list. I just need this game on my Switch. But I don't know. The trailer's been out for so long on their YouTube channel for the Switch version of the game, but I'm not sure Nintendo's ever gonna let this game onto their shop, just because of the gambling aspect of it, you know? I don't think that Genshin would ever go on to Switch because of how much they incentivize you to buy things in the game. I don't think Nintendo would be cool with that. Anyway, this was supposed to be a relaxing little conversation with myself, and it ended up being kind of an angry, yelling rant. But if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching or listening. Regardless, I've been Roman. Have a great rest of your day.